Good evening, everybody. Good evening. For those that don't know, I'm Greg Tech, a board member of the Los Paseos Neighborhood Association down south of Grinnell. We've been in existence about 3.5, almost 4 years now. Our neighborhood is also known as LPNA, if you ever see that around here and there. And on behalf of Los Paseos Neighborhood Association, I'd like to welcome you all to our quarterly meeting. We're doing quarters this year on Thursday evenings, and appreciate you being here. And I'd also like to acknowledge our honored guests tonight. Councilman Sergio Jimenez. Hi, guys. And Captain Fong. District 2 Captain. Been very helpful to our neighborhoods. They talk to them occasionally. Vanessa Sandoval will be here a little bit later. And also, thank you.
I'm actually, you got me instead of her. So she's not coming up.
She's not coming up.
We're just easy.
And
Maybe you wanted her. I don't know.
Our presenter, Don Whitney. Thank you very much for being here. We'll be hearing from these people as meeting progresses. And so we got a lot to cover tonight, so we're going to get started. So the next thing that's on our agenda is, I'd like to interrupt our agenda a little bit. Captain Johnson Fong is quite tight on time tonight, so maybe he can come up and give us an update on our district, our neighborhoods.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I was told I got like 2 minutes. I'll tell you facts. Right. Yeah. I really love this neighborhood because it's nice. And sometimes when I do criminal stats or statistics, I'm like, is this accurate? Because I have to run it like a couple of times to make sure that my information is accurate. So I asked Greg, I'm like, hey, could you give me the boundaries of the area, which you did? And I ran it literally like, I want to say 3 times, because I couldn't believe what I saw. And it's a good thing. So for the last 30 days, you guys have 1 burglary and 1 auto theft. And that's it. I couldn't believe it. Man, let me do this again, man. Yeah, now if I were to include across the street, in Burnell, across the street in Orlando, that little shopping center, there would have been more stuff. But I stayed within the boundaries that you gave me, so this is a very, very good month. Now, you guys might have heard that your other areas in the city, San Jose, is a little bit goofy. Willow Glen, Surge Glen, good. Keep it that way,
Well, yeah, you.
Yeah, but Dev Davis is being seen a little bit more, and just knowledge for you guys, because we're a very mobile city, right? Just because we live here, go to Lincoln, grab a meal, go to Villa, get some spaghetti, and we do see some stuff. We have seen some uptick, not a lot, but enough where we're somewhat concerned about juveniles under age of 18 committing robberies and carjacking. We arrested a bunch of kids that are 13, 14, 16, 19. I don't know about you guys. At 13, I was barely knowing how to ride a bicycle. No, really, I don't know what's going on the last couple of years, but there's definitely uptick. So please be very careful in those areas. We're doing our very best. So very, very good news of our organization right now is we're constantly recruiting and getting new applicants. And it's good. I love seeing the energy of these young folks. They're coming in, they're active. I just want you guys to know, since the calendar year, January of 2018, these younger officers and some senior officers, there's some productive senior officers, right, Serge? They're out there just are doing the work. They have taken off 160 firearms off the street, which means they're out there, they're making contact, they're talking to people, shaking them down legally, talking to them, and recovering, guns. So that's a good deal, because every gun that we take away, from these folks is 1 less gun that can be used in a crime. So as I promised Greg, I keep everything short. I think that's 2 minutes and 35 seconds. Is that about right, Alan?
Yep.
Thank you. You guys have a great night. All right. Now Cap has to find a new contract, man. John's not going to like that. All right. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you.
Thanks.
Passing fees. Next on our agenda is LPNA Business, which will take a little bit of time from Barbara. Our treasurer will give you a discussion.
Okay. The first thing we're going to do on the business is the minutes from last month. This is last meeting. This is just a routine process. The people who are on our email list got these a day or so ago, and by email we have copies up there. It's really just a formality to approve the minutes from the last meeting, sort of a Robert's Rules of Order kind of thing. So, but this is only for the people in Los Paseos neighborhood. So, does anybody have any objection to approving the minutes? And just since nobody objects, we're considering the minutes approved. All right. So, we have a couple of items of business. The first one is the election of LPNA officers. It's that time again. The next meeting that we'll have, that's an official member meeting, is November 15th. And at that meeting, we will be electing the officers for the calendar year 2019. And information on the process for the election, the positions, the nomination process will be posted on our website. I'll be giving Alan the information to post after tonight. Our nomination process is outlined in our bylaws. Nominations of candidates for elected positions shall be submitted through the LPNA website or in writing, including email is good enough, to any officer at least 30 days prior to the meeting when the election will take place. And since they have to be in 30 days, that means nominations will close October 15th. And again, all this information will be posted on our website. Financial update, I'm the treasurer, so I got the money. LPNA finished its fiscal year on June 30th with cash in the bank of $4,241. Most of that balance relates to the City of San Jose grant, the Beautify San Jose grant for $5,000 that we got, some of which has been spent. And since June, we used up $2,900 on the benches, which Greg will talk more about later, in the park, and for National Night Out. The city funding ends up covering a little more than half of our cost for National Night Out. And we hit up our local vendors for the rest, so that we can make it free for people in the neighborhood. And for the fiscal year 2018, we had revenue of $2,700. We don't count I don't really, because I'm an accountant. I don't count the grant revenue until we actually have completed the project that we're using the grant for, because if we don't complete the project, we have to give the money back. So we had $2,700 in revenue, $3,200 in spending. We had some cash at the beginning of the year, so that's how that balances out. Speaking of grant, I have one more thing to talk about, and that is under the grant we have some money for what they call art boxes. I'll show you the art box. We'll come back to this in a second. This is the box in front of the fire station. There's another similar box in front of Martin Murphy, but we're not going to talk about that one because we don't have a proposal yet for that. But we have a concept drawing for the artwork for the box in front of the fire station. And the fire station, I went in and met several of the firemen, and we had a long conversation. They were very enthusiastic about the idea. And it turns out that our fire station 27 has special equipment and special training for wildland fires. And they are the designated protectors of Coyote Valley. And they take that very seriously. Their station patch has Wile E. Coyote on it. And they took up a collection among the firemen to stencil Coyote Valley on their engine. So they take their stewardship of Coyote Valley very seriously. So we gave that along with other ideas to the artist, and what the artist came up with, I think it was building off one of those, I think it might have been the Post or one of those environmental groups that did an analysis of the wildlife of Coyote Valley. And so what we have is a combination of wildlife to be protected and a Dalmatian to protect this fire station. So we have a coyote, and the coyote would be on the front side, that would be facing the street. The bobcat and the tule elk would be on the ends. The tule elk are up on the ridge, Coyote Ridge, on the East Hills I've seen photographs of them. I haven't seen the tule elk myself. I've seen a bobcat and I've seen coyotes. I haven't seen a tule elk myself, but I've seen photographs. We have a few tweaks that we're going to ask be made. We want to make the colors look a little bit less like the hills are on fire. Yeah, that's right. I think it was supposed to be a sunset. Now it won't look exactly like this because this is a pencil sketch and it's paint, on the. So and also I think the coyote will have to move up because there's a ventilation grill on the front side of the box, and you wouldn't want, the coyote to look like he's looking out through a ventilation grill. So. So that's now we just have to get the city to straighten out its problem with the whole art box project. The city was putting more money into these projects, and they decided it needed more formality, so they wrote up this contract that requires a Philadelphia lawyer to analyze it, and put in a requirement that the artists carry liability insurance, and insurance would cost more than they're being paid for at the box. So they're trying to straighten that out, and hopefully we'll be able to go forward with this. We're going to have to ask for an extension on our grant, though, because at this point we're on hold until they can sign that. But they know that's a problem, and so they've put in a process to ask for the extension. So hopefully this will happen. We were going to do 2 boxes. The other box, the artist gave us an unacceptable concept drawing, and after we spat up all over that, we're back to the drawing board. So that one, we may have to give the money back for that one because I don't think there's going to be time to show that we've made enough progress to get an extension for that one. So it's that one we might have to put back into next year's grant request for the second box.
Barbara, what's the deadline again? September 31st?
It has to be completed by September 30th. And this one stands a chance of being completed by September 30th, but we're going to put a request for the extension in anyway, just in case. That will give us till March 31st. If we put the other box into next year's grant request, then we have a whole year to deal with that. And since we don't have a concept design at this point, I think that's probably a more realistic likelihood.
I wonder if they could actually put those words, protected friendly valley, that would be kind of cool.
We could see. You get to make suggestions to the artist, but the concept of this thing is that the artist has to have, to some extent, artistic license. And so you can make suggestions and you can veto something you really don't like, but you can't dictate what the artist puts on it because it has to be true to their artistic concept. So it's a kind of do a dance. But
you or your neighbors have any comments about what you saw tonight and would like to give her some more inputs, please let us know. We're looking for neighborhood inputs.
So I mean, this is still a concept drawing. No actual paint has been applied at this point. And this is just what the box looks like now, kind of. And now I'm done with the LPNA Business.
Thank you, Barbara. We can get a District 2 update from Sergio now.
Yeah. We need some music or something.
Thank you so much.
So, typically it's actually my chief of staff that comes and gives presentations and updates, but because I'm typically stuck at meetings, I was at a high-speed rail meeting, and so I left that. I think some of your residents were there, some of your neighbors. Yeah. And so Vanessa had to go to something else, and I said, well, I will come here. I've seen Dawn's presentation. It's excellent. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to be fascinated by it. It's very thought-provoking. But let me just give you a few updates. Captain Fong left. And actually, before I go on, I assume you know who I am. I'm your council representative at City Hall. I take great pride in representing your area, representing District 2 generally. Been in the area for many years and working very hard for everyone day in, day out. A few things. Substation, we continue to fight to try to get that open for the intended purposes of dispatching the police out of there. We got about, with this last budget cycle, we got about close to $2 million, about $1.5 million actually, allocated to the future opening of that, so we're inching in that direction. It's just going to take a little bit of time. The chief doesn't quite think that we have enough police officers just yet to get that fully operational, but we're moving in that direction. There's also going to be a gun buyback at the South Substation right here down the street later this fall. We'll be giving you more information about that. That's still in the works. The times that it's taken place before I was elected, there was a huge turnout, a lot of guns off the streets, a lot of people got paid for bringing in their guns. And so I expect it's going to be a well-attended event. This Saturday from 11 to 3, I believe, we're having Village Fest, which, how many folks are familiar with what that is? And so it was an event that was put on by the council member that preceded me. Essentially, the Target Shopping Center, where Safeway and Target is, that middle street, we close it down, and it's essentially a community fair. We have performances, we have a lot of tables for a lot of vendors, a lot of community groups come out, and really it's a good time to get to know your neighbors and learn a little bit more about what the city and a lot of the things going on around the city and the things that are offered to the residents. So I encourage you to pop by. I'm going to be there. A lot of elected leaders are going to be there. County Board of Supervisors, Osh Callrup, who used to represent this area, is going to be there, and a lot of your neighbors are going to be there. The other thing we're planning for the fall is the fire department, fire chief, along with some other fire personnel. We're going to have an educational forum on fire prevention and other things impacting you, given that you live here near the hills, and the fact that there's been some fires, and as well as you all know, up north there's been a lot going on with the complex fire and car fire. So to the nitty-gritty of some of the things that impact you directly, I'm just going to touch on these things, and if you have any questions after, happy to answer questions. The shopping center, Santa Teresa Shopping Center up the Knob Hill, right? I know there was a lot of fuss over the church potentially moving in there. Raley's and ROIC, who's the property management company, they actually went to arbitration. And so I was told just today that just this week they wrapped up arbitration, and that ROIC will regain possession of the building in October, and that they're going to be moving diligently forward to get a grocery in there. And so things are moving forward. Last time around, I ceded some semblance of control. Some of the community meetings, if you attended those, to Isa, who also lives in your area. I've taken a different approach this time. I've taken a very personal approach. So our office is in contact with all the different groups trying to sort of move us forward in a meaningful direction so that way we stop just dealing with this. Because quite frankly, it's irritating to all of you and to us that we haven't been able to reach a resolution. So I think we're almost there. So as soon as we have an announcement or something, I'll make sure to reach out to you. Also, the Ace Hardware store. It's been vacant for a while. There's actually going to be a new tenant there. That's going to be Shapes Fitness for Women. Is going to be moving in there. It's going to be a gym focused on women. So they're going to be moving in there. So, which is great news, I think. As you all know, the more activity we get in some of these centers, the better it is for the community. The less likely I think there is for some of the folks roaming around causing problems and things of that nature. So I think we're moving in a good direction. Participatory budgeting, the PB, the infamous $1 million that was the process that began before I was elected. We're close to wrapping it up. I'll first talk about the cameras. Isa, as you well know, how many of you know Isa? When I say Isa, you know who I'm talking about. So he was a big proponent for the cameras, and he and another group of folks really took the lead in pushing that proposal. We've had many, many meetings with Isa at City Hall and some of the folks that are on his team. And so the camera project's moving forward. They're waiting to get their status from the state as a nonprofit because they're going to receive the money and then manage it. They're going to be required to do audits and a host of other things that are going to have protections to make sure the money's spent properly. He and the group that he's working with is dealing with the city attorney's office to negotiate and sort of work out the contract. So we're actively having meetings. I think that's going to be wrapped up hopefully by the end of the year. So that's where that is. Now I'm going to read a few things because I don't have the ability to spend day in, day out on a lot of these projects. So what my staff has told me is that the beautification of Santa Teresa landscaping neighborhood signs has recently been completed. These projects include the planting of 50 trees and laying mulch along Santa Teresa Boulevard, installing 4 neighborhood identifier signs, 2 Los Paseos signs, and 2 Avenida España signs. And they told me to make sure to say that the sign design and placement location was decided by the project proponents, and the signs are intended to identify the neighborhoods, not necessarily the streets, right? Because you're not going to see for example, the Avenida España sign right on Avenida España, because it's that area back there. The repainting of the sound wall along Santa Teresa Boulevard, and this includes the sound wall being power washed and prepared, so that's ongoing. The park upgrades, the solar lights for Los Paseos Park is complete. And so if I'm incorrect in any of this, please don't. And then this includes, to be completed this fall, it includes one park shade structure at Los Paseos Park and one park shade structure at Metcalf Park. So the other thing is the ACO furniture site, the old roller rink site. As you all know, so you probably got a flyer on your doorstep by some folks that maybe aren't too happy about that. Charities Housing is interested in building low-income housing for low-income seniors. They've committed to filling about close to 25,000 square feet of commercial space there. So there's going to have Catholic Charities going to be moving in there, as well as an organization, a company called Unlock, that provides health services and other types of things and support for seniors. So it's essentially going to be a senior-focused project. They just submitted the documents, so all the public meetings and such have not taken place. There is no final project, nothing like that. So once those meetings begin taking place, we will inform you all via Nextdoor, social media. I'm sure Greg will pass along the information. No decision has been made, and so that's still moving forward. Ironically, as it relates to your neighborhood, even though that's out by Blossom Hill and Snell, Southridge Church is using their location. And one of the reasons we asked Southridge Church to join them is that while this whole planning process is going through, we thought it was very important, because that shopping center already has issues. We thought it was very important to not have a vacant building there. And so Southridge Church has decided to team up with charities and conduct their church services out of that site and really activate it, so that way during this process, this planning process, it's going to be utilized and active, which I think is a good thing. And if you're familiar with Southridge Church, they're a very active community church, do a lot of great things, and I think it's a good addition. So House on the Hill. Anyone familiar with that? Does that sound familiar? Now, we've been in touch with, because I know there's some folks that have been sending emails about, I think they switched planners, and there's been some changes in the planning department and other departments in the city. So I want to read to you what the planning director told us recently. So they essentially said that the permit was submitted by the applicant in March 2017. The planning division provided comments to the applicant in June and hosted a community meeting on June 22nd, 2017, at which time the overwhelming majority of attendees, I think that was the Los Paseos Center, expressed opposition to the proposal. Planning staff's initial comments noted the project's inconsistency with the general plan's open hillside land use designation and hillside design policies, which state that the development should preserve the natural features of the hillsides, right? The view shed, preserving hillsides is very important to all of us. Environmental analysis also needs to be conducted as part of the project's consideration. The applicant has not submitted redesign plans and environmental documents to address the planning staff's recommendations. So essentially, we're in a holding stage. Planning has told him, you need to go back, you need to redesign some things, come back to us, resubmit those, we'll evaluate them. That's where we are. So nothing's been approved, it hasn't come before the city council. It's likely going to go to the planning commission before it even comes to us. And at that point, once I review all that information, I'll make a decision and vote a particular way, but I haven't decided anything. So sometimes we get emails, folks suggesting that the decision's been made, and it just hasn't. So it's still going through the process. Yes?
Is there a deadline that they have to have it?
I don't believe there's a particular deadline that like they have 2 months to submit anything, but what I can tell you is I've seen other projects that effectively go stale. And then the planning department reaches out to them and says, look, you're going to move forward or not, because we're going to sort of pull back all the work that we've done. And it's essentially killing the project. So that hasn't happened. I think it's going to take some time for that to actually happen if, in fact, he doesn't submit anything. With that, there's a lot more I can talk about. There's a lot going on in our city and our district. If you have any questions, I'll entertain, assuming it's okay, Greg. Yeah, maybe a few questions. So I'll let you call on folks, Greg. How about that? Okay. Yeah. Sure.
So since you're with the high-speed rail, can you do a quick update on what the city's doing? Because, you know, it kind of got rotated around what the plans were on that. And then the homeless issue, you know, we had a hard hit on that. You took a lot of flack on it. Oh boy, so.
Yeah, so high-speed rail, very generally, it's a state project, as you all know. So the tact and the approach that I've taken, and quite frankly, it's the approach that the mayor and all the other council members that are impacted by high-speed rail have taken, is that we've written letters, and you can view these on my website. You'll see the letters that we've written to high-speed rail expressing to them the need for them to seek out other alternatives. Is essentially where we are. So the thought is that I'm under the assumption high-speed rail is going to happen unless they can't find funding. Again, that's a state issue. But assuming it does, I want it to have the least amount of impact in our community as possible. And so from the very outset of taking office, we began having discussions amongst the mayor and some of us other council members on other alternatives. So what we did is we asked our Department of Transportation to hire an independent consultant to conduct some of this analysis and try to figure out if there are other alternate routes or approaches that the high-speed rail can take. And so some of those, for example, were coming down Monterey Road and then slowly maybe start tunneling before you get to, I'm trying to remember all this, Capitol, and then essentially go underground, essentially going underneath all your neighborhoods to the other side of 101 and coming out on that side. That would have close to no impact on your neighborhood. On your
That's mitigation.
Right, exactly. And so that, and there was another version of cut and cover, so they wouldn't necessarily do a tunnel, but they would drill a hole and just cover the top. And so there's different versions of this that's been happening. And so High-Speed Rail recently released their most recent business plan, which unfortunately didn't include some of this. And so we're watching it very closely. Tonight, they essentially were having another series of meetings. They were starting off the series of meetings. It's called the Community Working Group. So around the city, you have representatives from different parts of the city around this table, literally, having a discussion with High-Speed Rail, expressing your perspectives, Los Paseos perspectives. And so that's sort of where we are. We're watching it closely, and we're trying to figure out how to get them to move and change. High-Speed Rail, being a state project, there's a lot of other things at play, and quite frankly, if they can't find the money, this may not go anywhere. But we're watching it very closely. I encourage you to go on the website. You can view all the documents, all the different things that we've been doing at the city level. With regard to the homeless situation, you know, this is such a very difficult situation to solve. What we in the city have been doing for many years, and we spend a huge amount of money on this, is that we find an encampment, people essentially sleeping on the side of the road, on the side of Monterey Road or by the freeway. We clean them out, they disappear, they come back. It's this endless cycle. And so I recognize, and I think most council members, including the mayor, would recognize that this is not working. I think, and we all on the council agree on this unanimously, is that the end goal, the core of the solution is going to be housing. So in 2016, in the county, we passed the housing bond, close to, I think, about $750 million at the county level is going to be used to build out some of these projects to provide supportive housing with wraparound services for a lot of these folks who are living on the street. But we know that that takes a long time to build, getting those through the process and all that. And so in the interim, what are we doing? We're trying to figure out a few things. One is we're exploring the idea of having safe parking, because not all the homeless folks are living out on the road. Some of them live in their cars, and they're in the middle of our neighborhoods. We get complaints that people feel unsafe because there's people sleeping in vehicles in their neighborhood. It's also not very safe for them. And so we're exploring ways of potentially opening up city property in which those people can go there and park and be safe and essentially get out of these dark streets in the neighborhood, right? And essentially give them a central place where they can go park their car and sleep. It's called safe parking. Some churches are doing that already. So we're exploring that. We're also exploring the more difficult conversation of sanctioning encampments. Essentially what that is saying we're going to designate one or many or none areas within the city where essentially we're going to tell Joe who's sleeping on the side of the road, Joe, you can't stay here, but you can go to this location and camp out there. And you can stay there and we won't abate you, but we don't want you on the side of the road. That is something that city leaders prior to me getting in office have not been interested in looking at. I think we need to look at everything, quite frankly, but one of the most difficult components of doing any of this, especially sanctioned encampments, is where you put it. As you can imagine, many people say we need to do something, but then you get, as I told some residents, we get that infamous but not here, do it over there. And all the neighborhoods around the city feel the same way. They're like, do it over there. And so that leaves nowhere. And so that's the biggest challenge we have, is where do we put these, assuming we move forward with these. And then you have the infamous tiny homes that was it's sort of died down. I haven't heard much about it from the residents. So there's 2 sites that are being explored for tiny homes pilot. One of those is by the newly constructed Berryessa BART station by the San Jose Flea Market over there in Berryessa, North San Jose. There's a site there that's really, it's been graded, it's ready to go, and they're exploring whether that's viable, that's a viable site, or the other side is underneath 101 and 280. It's a Caltrans property. And so those are being evaluated right now. One thing that I know that's been very consistent from residents is that it costs too much dang money to build these little tiny homes. And so because the sites we're considering are outside of District 2, what I've been focusing on is how do we reduce the cost to nothing, close to nothing, to build these. And how do we do that? So over the summer, I spent part of my summer in Mexico building houses for poor families with a church, St. Julie's, which is actually down the way. And I was very amazed at the work they've been doing for many, many years. But one thing that the group expressed to me is that they have a lot of members that can't make it to Mexico to help build these houses. And they're much bigger than these tiny homes. And they said, we have a lot of folks that would be very much interested in donating their time, their effort, their skills to building these here in their city. And so I'm scheduling a meeting with some of the folks that have committed that time and resources in Mexico, because they're from our community, to figure out how we can direct that to building some of these homes, to eliminate the costs, quite frankly. They would do it there would be some costs inevitably, but it'd be much less expensive. And I think it'd be a win-win in which we would get the involvement from our residents, which I think would do a world of good to making people realize the plight and recognize the plight of some of the most vulnerable residents in the city. And so that's what I've been focusing on. And I can go on and on about homelessness. There's no silver bullet. We're exploring every which way to try to figure this out, because what we're doing right now isn't working.
So if we do that, they were planning one over here by the Shell station, we'd have social workers and everything. Is that whole business coming part of this? We build it, and then there'd be services for them?
So there is going to be nothing by the
I know, but we were talking about before.
Right.
Yeah,
right. There was a misconception that by the Shell station by Burnell and Monterey Road, that something was going to go there, and nothing was or is going to go there. And so correct. So sometimes I hear people say, well, listen, obviously some of the folks that are living on the street, they're like us. They come from a variety of backgrounds, have a number of different ailments, whether it be alcohol, drugs, mental health issues. Some have all, some have one, some have none. The challenge is, how do you provide those services to them? And so whatever we do for the homeless population, I want to assure you that we work with the county to make sure they have wraparound services, social workers, therapists, doctors, all that's going to be there. So everything we talk about is going to include that. And so we want to address this at the very core, but it's going to take time. And really, it takes everyone to want to step up and try to fix this issue. So with that, Dawn's giving me the look. Please note that you can reach out to, I'm going to stay here a little longer, but if you can reach out to my office anytime, we try to be as responsive and accessible as more than any other office on the floor. We have tons of information on the website about homelessness. I can come out to your house, we can have coffee, whatever it may be. We're super excited.
Maybe we'll try that sometime.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Before we get into Dawn, I told her we're going to have a little bit of a discussion and show you all what we did in 2018 as Los Paseos Neighborhood Association projects that we did around. So let me run through a couple of slides and show you some of the things we did. Burnell Church has what they call 5-hand Sunday. It's 4 times a year. A Sunday falls on the 5th Sunday of the month. There's 4 months that have 5 Sundays in it. So what they do is they take that month, that Sunday, and they get all their church members to volunteer to do something around the neighborhood. So what they did on April 29th is they installed 85 yards of fir bar to the playground area over at Los Paseos Park. The Parks Department provided 16 wheelbarrows and 85 yards of fir bar, and it was done like in about 3 or 4 hours. 20 or 30 people showed up. And LPNA was involved in that. A lot of members were there with that. Another thing that Burnell Church did with Los Paseos Neighborhood Association, we painted the restroom at the Los Paseos Park. It looks brand new now. There's a couple of little dinks on it, but they're going to fix that too. It's city gray and city green. That's the colors, they're official colors. There's a couple of volunteers at work. I know a couple of them. They were beautifying the restroom that day. It's kind of neat to see it. The restroom really looks beautiful. Another thing that Los Paseos did through our Beautify SJ grants is we worked with our city forest and AmeriCorps and LPNA volunteers, and Los Paseos Neighborhood Association purchased 10 trees for close to $1,000, and we had our city forest people come out and plant them. We planted 10 trees around the park in various areas. They're called Catalpa speciosa. They're going to get very, very tall, about 30, 40, 50 feet tall. But the leaves are huge on it, and they have a pretty white flower in the springtime. So we go out and water them every Tuesday. If anybody's interested in helping and going out to the park and watching who's in the park at that time of the day, it's a lot of fun to meet people out there. Quite a few people roam the park. Another thing that we did with the Beautify SJ grant, we put in 2 park benches. This one here is just a close-up shot of the other benches we have. One on the upper left is facing the tennis courts. This is one on the right, is the same one that's looking from the front. And the other one is along the pathway close to the picnic area, the reserved picnic area. So those were installed only about 2 weeks ago.
And thanks, Sergio, for the extra money for getting those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with great cooperation
Yeah.
from the city parks department.
Yeah.
They've been very, very cooperative. They like it, when people like the park and want to help the park, they get excited too.
Another thing that we collaborated with Bernal Church is the painting of the Los Paseos Elementary Library, which was a very dull color that's been that way for decades. Pastor up there, Pastor Mark, and the principal, Debbie, is down there painting. And a couple other neighbors were over there helping us do this. So we painted the library that orangey color and the sky blue. It really looks neat. And some of the shelves were painted that kind of a green color. The library is going to really be perked up. Really, because the teachers are very happy about it. At the same time, the teacher's lounge at Martin Murphy was upgraded the same way. We painted the walls with the help of the Bernal Church. My neighbor, who was doing a reconstruction of his kitchen, happened to have a refrigerator and a stove that he didn't need anymore, so we took that over there and stuck it in there. Got rid of a 45-year-old refrigerator and a stove that had bricks inside the oven. And that lady right there is Sherry. She's so happy. You couldn't believe when she opened that. See how clean the oven is? So she was very happy about this. So the teachers over there, and we're going to try to get them some new chairs too. And this is the first night that the solar lights in the park turned on. There's a couple walking there. It's kind of a neat picture. And there's one of our benches and the solar lights over there. It's a big battery up in the top of it. Each solar light pings up to a satellite and down to the city again so that they can determine how much to charge for that day, if it's having a charging problem or if it's not charging. Say, for instance, a branch grows across the solar panel. They'll be able to see that and go out and fix it. So they're pretty intelligent. They're not connected to the grid, but each light has a grounding rod that goes down. You'll see a little square panel on the side of the light. That's a grounding rod that goes down for grounding of the light. Really nice. It adds a lot of ambiance at night.
And we have to add, we have the most solar lighting of any park in San Jose now.
Yes.
Every park should do that.
Yes. And one of our big things that we did this year, is we do it every year, is we have 500 people show up on our National Night Out. We serve a lot of hot dogs and ice cream. And the police department came out, CHP came out, and lo and behold, Air 3 came circling our event for 4 times. It went around and honked its horn at us. It was kind of fun to look out into the crowd and see everybody waving at it. We had a good time. And the mayor of Ricardo, Sam Ricardo, oops, sorry about that. He came and gave a little presentation and told us a few things. We had 2 junkie houses, a big one and a small one this year. For the little small one for the little kids and a big one for the bigger kids. It worked out much better. Last year we only had 1 and that was a disaster. So
It wasn't a disaster.
it was. So we learn something every year, and we're getting better every year. We had a blues band. You can see it down behind the mayor there. They played blues music that was just out of sight. Next year, tell your friends to come. It's a lot of fun. And I think all I'm going to say is thanks for all your help in the neighborhood. When you do help, we really appreciate it. And we do have a lot more to come next year. We're going to get more involved and try to get more people involved. Thank you. So with that, I'd like to maybe turn you to